Good evening, board. It's nice to see everyone again tonight. I wanted to follow up on some questions that you guys had from our last meeting pertaining about ability grouping. What does it look like? Are we doing it in our school currently? And what is our standpoint of me as an administrator and what we're trying to do to incorporate it into the classroom? So to answer that first question for you guys, just to give you an idea of what it looks like, traditionally in an ability grouping, what you would see would go into a classroom. Usually it's more in your reading and math classes, but it can also be in your other core subjects. But what you're going to see is that you're going to have different tiers or different groups. So you're going to have a high level group, a middle level group, and a low group. All your high level achievers will be in a group working together. All your middle level achievers, going to be working together, and then your lower level will be working together. Now then what will be happening then is the teacher then will be walking around the classroom and should be helping and working amongst the three different groups, guiding them through the lesson or whatever the project is that they have for that day or for the unit or chapter or whatever it would be. Some pros to ability grouping is that one, being in these groups is it's going to create some good social skills and social interactions. It's also going to create good problem solving skills as well as critical thinking skills. And it does have those students work on collaborating with one another and having to work together as a whole. It also helps for your higher level learners. It helps create a lesson or a curriculum that's a little bit more tailored to them so that maybe if they don't get stuck or get bored in classroom, you hear a lot from your higher level, or you hear about with students that are your higher level. And so it gives them a chance to work forward and work at an advanced pace so that they can continually challenge themselves to increase their knowledge or to learn more and more in-depth material. Whereas your middle and lower levels will be at a little bit slower pace and won't probably get to cover as much material. So those are the pros for the ability level, for ability grouping. But also there are some cons that go with it. The cons that are going to go with this is the first one, and I feel it's an important one, is that this ability grouping, it's found that it can severely impact the self-esteem of those students that are middle to low grouping. Also, what you're going to find is that these students then are going to begin self-labeling themselves because kids are smart and they see what's going on around them, and it's not going to take long for them to acknowledge that, hey, those kids are the smart kids, and I'm one of the dumb kids, and I don't get to be in that group. You also see kids maybe just labeling, see that they're not worthy or they're not equal, they're inadequate, and that they don't belong in the class or the classroom. And again, you get these labels. If I'm not being smart, which then they don't want to work and they have a struggle to challenge themselves to learn. So the negative self-esteem that can develop from this is really important, and it's something that's really showed up a lot. And it's not maybe this has happened, and it literally happens to students in this ability grouping. Another problem is that when we do put these groups, a lot of times we do it subjectively, and it's not on purpose, but teachers, we base it off a lot of perceived intelligence. We don't know what's going on with that student outside the classroom. Especially in your bigger schools, you don't, and even in our small district, there's a lot of things that are going on outside of that classroom that we have no impact on, and we don't know what's going on. We may have students that are getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to help get their brothers and sisters up so they can get on a bus and ride for 45 minutes. Then they come here to take a test first period. That kid probably isn't going to be too excited or too ramped up or ready to rock in that first period class, and he's probably not going to do very well on a test. Now, does that mean that kid's not a high learner, or that he's not smart, or that he doesn't understand the material? Not necessarily, because there's a lot of other variables that come into play that we don't always see as teachers when they do get their grouping together. Another thing that's come to find is that when we do create these groups and these labels, is that it's very difficult for these students to remove these labels or to move to another group or to move up. And they kind of get pigeonholed within these groups throughout their educational careers. And that's unfair because, these kids, the third, fourth, fifth graders, are still growing and developing both physically and mentally and socially. And we can't put this label on them because it may stick with them all the way through their educational careers. And finally, with this ability grouping, what is found is that it really impacts then the minority and ELL students. And a major reason why that is that these students come in, and yeah, they're probably going to have, they have a different cultural background. There may be a language barrier or a cultural barrier there that prevents that student from clearly communicating the correct answer. Well, we don't hear the correct answer, we immediately are going to assume that kid, doesn't know the material. They're not a smart kid. Put them in the middle, put them in a low group. When in fact, it's just simply there's a miscommunication somewhere between the assessment and the student, and we're unfairly labeling then those students into a lower achieving group. So there are some pros, there are some cons. From my viewpoint as administrator, and the way that we feel as a staff is that the cons severely outweigh the pros in this ability grouping. What we want to work towards and maintain and to keep going in our school is our Marzano Academy approach to group learning. We've been fortunate enough to have a lot of direct instruction through the Marzano Academy, and one of the things that they talk about is group learning. And it is possible to have a successful group learning and have them be heterogeneous groupings. And what that means by heterogeneous, what we mean by that is that we aren't taking groups and separating them by intelligence or by ethnicity or by gender or by what shoes they wear. We're not, none of that. We're trying to get a melting pot or in a group with a variety of different students in that group. And through that, then, we can create a really sound experiment or experience for them to learn through. But in order for the heterogeneous grouping to work, there are 4 elements that Marzano states that we got to make sure is being used to make sure that we have a successful grouping. Those 4 elements is that 1, each member in that group has to have is included. Okay, we can't just have kids spacing off, not doing something. Every kid in that group must be included. Secondly, each person in that group needs to have a valid job. They have to feel like what they're doing is valid, it has a worth, they are contributing, they are needed. Second, we got to make sure that each member of that group is invested in the lesson. Try to make it so we can reach those kids so that they truly are interested, they want to be part of it. And then we got to make sure that each member is accountable both individually and collectively. They hold themselves accountable. That's within that lesson with that group. If we can follow these elements, we can make sure we have successful heterogeneous groupings within the classroom, and we can still build on social skills. We can still build those critical thinking skills, and we can also do it without having any preconceived notions about students and creating any incorrect labelings or misconceptions where we're sending a kid out of here feeling worse than they did when they came in. Because our goal is in this school is that we want to create kids that are successful not only in the classroom but also outside the classroom. We want them to have a great educational experience, but we also want to make them socially prepared for when they get outside or when they end their educational career through us, so that they can go out in society and they could be successful contributing members to the community. And we don't want students to feel inadequate or they feel that they didn't get a fair chance or a fair shake within our school system. And we really feel like this teaching strategy, going through the Marzano approach, we can create a healthy and stable learning environment through this heterogeneous grouping. So there's a little insight into the ability grouping where I stand as an administrator, and also then our approach then with the staff members. I hope you guys are able to take some information away from this. If you have any questions, at this time, I'll gladly take them. If you have any other concerns, I'll write them down also, and we'll do some more research if need be. So, thank you, and any questions?